In the last few lectures, we've looked at two accounts of personal identity. The so-called dualist or soul account that says, well, personal identity is this soul that's attached to your body in some way, and that's what makes you who you are. We've also looked at this physicalist or body account, and it says, well, look, what makes you the same person is what makes my coffee cup the same coffee cup, my computer the same computer. It's the same material stuff arranged in the same way. Now, both these theories have some problems, right? Some problems of detail, some complicated issues get in the way. But I think the bigger issue with both, beyond these sort of puzzles, beyond these more technical problems, is just that it doesn't seem that they capture what we care about, right? If your soul survives, but you have no memory and none of your personality survives, I think there's a lot to be said for this, well, who cares, right? Response. If reincarnation turns out to be true, but lo and behold, the vast majority of us don't remember anything about our previous lives and our personalities aren't in any way affected by who we used to be, and I think we'd just say, well, who cares, right? If even the people who do remember it pretty quickly forget, what kind of consolation is that for death, right? What kind of survival is that really? In the same vein, if someone told you, well, your body will survive, but your mind is going to be completely erased, you probably wouldn't care too much about that either, right? You wouldn't say, a mad scientist example, if they're going to erase your brain, put somebody else's, memories and personality in there, and your body survives, you wouldn't like that much. Most of us would think that is akin to death, even though our body survives, right? So the real question with both the body and the soul account is just if it really captures what we care about. So with that in mind, I want to turn to this memory account, the memory theory of personal identity. And we're going to see, that the memory theory maybe captures a bit better what we care about. The memory theory is also going to have its own problems. So, memory theory says memory is what makes you the same person over time. Well, if you can remember your previous state, if you can remember being you at 5 years old or 7 years old or 10 years old or whatever, then you are still the same person. If you have a memory of an earlier state in your life, you are still the same person you have a memory of being. If some future 80 or 90-year-old you has a memory of being you at 20 or 30 or whatever, future me at 90, hopefully if I live that long, has a memory of me at 40, it will be the same person. He will be me, right? Memory is what makes you the same person. Well, let's look at the memory theory and the tough cases we've been looking at throughout, right? I think it'll help us to understand the theory if we can see what it would say in these cases. Well, reincarnation. It would say yes if certain conditions are satisfied. If you really remember your previous life, then you're the same person. If this person, Barbara Kalin, actually remembers being Anne Frank, then she is in fact her, right? If this boy remembers being a World War II fighter pilot, then he is really the same guy who was the fighter pilot. Case of so-called Hollywood amnesia, where someone suffers a brain injury and forgets all their previous life. A really total case of this was Sue Meck, who I've talked about. If you were her, then you post-accident, when you don't remember anything of your previous life, you would in fact be a different person. Post-accident mech doesn't remember pre-accident mech. She is, according to the memory theory, a different person. If you downloaded your mind to a computer, be it a desktop, be it a robot body, be it whatever, well, yes, that would still be you. Why? Assuming the download is accurate, this computer would still have your memories. Well, what are the advantages of the memory theory? Well, clearly, very clearly, the memory theory gets at some of what we care about. When we were talking about the body theory and the soul theory, we didn't like them, and we had some dissatisfaction or some questions because we said, well, if my memory's not preserved, would that really be me, right? I think the reactions a lot of people have to the soul and the body theory shows that memory really does matter. It's an important part of personal identity. It clearly gets at some of what we care about, right? Remembering who you used to be is something that does, just given our reactions to these other theories, if your reaction's at all like mine, it does seem to be an important part of personal identity. And think about the reincarnation cases, right? Even there, you can kind of see the priority, the importance that memory has. Why in the world would anybody ever think that Barbara Kalin, sorry, I keep adding an R, I don't know why. Why would anyone ever think she was Anne Frank? Well, because she has her memories, or at least claims to, right? We don't see the soul. Nobody observes that. This actor Buddy, who is the cousin of Frank, he doesn't see her soul, but he's like, okay, well, she has the memories that I can observe. That's what we care about, right? So memories do seem to play this really important role, given our reaction both to supposed cases of reincarnation. We think they might be the same person because they have the same memory. And also in our reactions to these body theories of personal identity and these soul theories, right? Memory is what is important here. Or at least it's part of it given the way we react. The memory theory, this is philosophy, right? This frustrating experience. I remember one class I had a student, we talk about how great some theory is, all of its advantages, and he's like, I know what you're going to do now. Now you're going to tell us what's wrong with it, right? Not quite tell you what's wrong with it, maybe a little more complex. But I do want to tell you the challenges to the memory theory. The memory theory in some respects looks like an advance over the body theory and over the soul theory, but it does have its own problems. One is just this question of how much memory is enough. Look, we can picture, there's all these sci-fi stories. Sorry to fall back on sci-fi. I'm a huge old nerd, but also I think they're useful, right? There are these sci-fi stories where you can scan one random memory from someone's past and implant it in someone else, right? If they did that, that wouldn't make me that person, though, right? If I have one memory, say they scan some famous athlete's brain, and it's the memory of him hitting a walk-off home run or something, right? If you downloaded that to my brain, I've never hit a walk-off home run in my life, even in middle or elementary school. Usually, I was better at the high pop-up. Somebody in the outfield catches it at best. But let's say, I have that one memory of being this famous athlete. That wouldn't make me him, right? One memory, one random memory clearly would not be enough. All right. Well, here's another issue. What about false memories? It turns out, and this is, something that if you remember nothing else from this class, I think this is useful to remember. It turns out that memory is very, very fallible. We human beings aren't computers. When we access a memory, we actually change it. Every time we remember something, there's a chance we alter it. It's not just that we're like your computer who opens up your term paper that you haven't worked on in a week and it's still exactly the same, right? Or maybe, don't do this. I remember opening old college term papers and not the most fun experience, right? I'm like, oh my God, I was a terrible writer. But if I find on my hard drive a college paper I haven't read for 3 years, it's still going to be the same unless the hard drive gets corrupted in some way, and then probably I just won't be able to open it, right? Memories aren't like that. By accessing memories, we change them a lot of times. We reinterpret them in light of our current experience. Memories are very fallible. Human beings are also very prone to making up memories. There's all kinds of studies of this. People have gotten in legal trouble because psychologists and others, well-intentioned, have prompted kids to remember things that they don't actually remember. And the same with adults. And more innocent cases, I've been told some stories about me as a child, me as a 2-year-old, that I seem to remember, right? I think there's one that my parents and aunts and uncles love about me pinching my poor grandfather on the butt. The thing is, I don't really remember that. I think I do. I seem to have this memory of doing this. But I was 2 or 3. I think I was just going on 3. Physiologically, it's pretty certain that you don't remember things before the limit. There's some argument about the limit, but definitely not before about age 4, right? Most people say it's more like 5, and even 5 is very dubious. Usually it's more like 6 or 7. I have some memories when I was 5 or 6 that I'm pretty sure are accurate because I've never told anybody about them and I still seem to remember it. But there's others of things that when I was really young, my parents have told me about. Those, or others, those I'm really dubious about. And the duplicate problem. Well, look. Think about our sci-fi example. Look, a computer program's a computer program. If we scan your brain, what's to stop us from downloading it to multiple computers, right? If Kurzweil gets his fondest wish, the grand dream of Ray Kurzweil, and we can make him into Robo Kurzweil who's not going to die, well, we've got the program. What's to stop us from creating 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Ray Kurzweils, right? I mean, one Ray Kurzweil seems enough. I don't know why we would do that, but we could. And then which one of these Robo Kurzweils is going to be the real him? We'll talk in a minute why this is a huge problem. So let's bore a little more deeply into all of these. So as I said, look, a single memory of being a person wouldn't be enough to make me that person. Well, here's the problem, though. Obviously, with our own memories, we forget stuff, right? How much of being a 10-year-old do you really remember? You probably remember some stuff. Psychological consensus is that definitely past the age of 7, people have legit memories. But how much do you remember really of being a 10-year-old? You remember some stuff. Probably not that much, though, right? When you're 50, how much are you going to remember? Let's assume you're 20 or 30 right now. How much are you going to remember being a 20 or 30-year-old? Some things, definitely, the important things, but a lot is going to be forgotten. Well, now we get this problem, right? Or think of Sumek, right? If she had one single memory, let's say it's going on a picnic when she's 12 years old, we'd probably say that's not enough to make her the same person, right? Well, but how much do we need? And given that all of us forget stuff, given that all of us forget a lot of stuff, do we have enough? How do we answer this how much question? You might say something like, well, you need the normal amount. But what in the world is the normal amount? And why assume the normal amount's even good enough, right? We're assuming that personal identity holds in normal cases. Should we really make that assumption? Maybe we aren't the same people. I don't know. Doesn't it maybe assume something to think we are? An even bigger problem is false memories. Like I said, it's easy to revise our memories when we go back and access them, but even more troubling is it's very easy to make up memories. So as I said, it's quite easy to produce false memories. There's a famous case, I don't know, if you take a psychology class, you'll probably see this in your psychology textbook. Jean Piaget, Swiss psychologist. This happened in the 19th century, and pretty early, long time people have been aware of this. So for his whole life, up until he was about 15 years old, he had this incredibly traumatic memory of someone trying to kidnap him when he was a toddler. Vivid, incredibly, he thought, accurate memory. This guy tries to snatch him. His brave nanny steps up and fights the guy off. She gets beat up a bit. The police finally come as she's heroically fighting the kidnapper. And kidnapper runs off. Piaget not only had this memory, he had nightmares about it. He was traumatized by this memory of the kidnapping. Well, guess what? The kidnapping never happened. The nanny made the story up to get a reward, to look good to Piaget's parents, her employers. She told them about this kidnapping, and her brave role in it. Piaget heard the story over and over and over when he was a boy. He made up this memory. Not only was it so vivid that he remembered it, it was so vivid that it actually, to a certain extent, traumatized him. Well, now y'all are surely saying, okay, well, how do we know that Piaget made it up? How do we know it didn't happen? Well, the nanny had a religious conversion later in life, decided to confess and repent of all her previous sins. She sent a letter to Piaget's parents. Yeah, that time that the boy was almost kidnapped and I heroically fought off the thief and you guys gave me this really nice reward for it. Yeah, I made that up. I made it up and I faked the injuries because I wanted a reward. Sorry. Piaget was stunned by this because this was one of his most vivid, real-seeming memories. But it was made up, right? And look, I harp on this, partially because it's important for personal identity, but also it's because it's something I think you guys should remember with eyewitnesses, especially eyewitnesses who've told their story multiple times. Memory is very fallible. People are very prone to making stuff up, often without even realizing they're making stuff up, especially under leading questioning. So anyway, Keep that in mind, especially if you're ever on a jury. Eyewitnesses aren't nothing, but they're maybe not something you should just have blind faith in as like a gold standard either. Our memory, it turns out, not great. We'll talk about this when we get to Rashomon later in the semester. This will create some more philosophical problems. Anyway, why is this so important here? Well, think about this. Barbara Kalin thinks she has Anne Frank's memories. Let's assume she does. Let's assume she's not a fraud. Let's assume she really thinks she is Anne Frank. Well, but there's a lot of ways people could maybe get these memories without actually having ever been Anne Frank. Let's imagine that a very imaginative little girl reads Anne Frank's diaries, maybe sees all those movies about her, studies up on her. We can very well imagine this child having daydreams about actually being this person to the point that they think they are, right? A lot of, maybe some cases of reincarnation are true. I don't know. I've tried to be neutral on that. But some are pretty clearly bunk, right? And some might be bunk even though the person has what they think are pretty accurate memories. I say that some are pretty clearly bunk because it just seems to me weird that everybody remembers being a king or Anne Frank or whoever. Nobody ever remembers being someone completely unimportant, or very few people do, right? Very few people seem to remember, I was a 15th century peasant, worked till I was 40 and then got an infection and died. It wasn't great. Instead they're like, I was Charlemagne, or I was Winston Churchill, or I was Anne Frank. That always makes me a little dubious, right? But look, with these famous people, especially Anne Frank or Eleanor Roosevelt or John Lennon, JFK, whoever, there are biographies of these people who have a lot of detail. If you are an imaginative child or even an adult, it seems to me very easy that in the same way Piaget fabricated this memory of being kidnapped, you could fabricate a memory of being Anne Frank or JFK or John Lennon or Eleanor Roosevelt. And if you fabricate the memory, well, then you're not really them, right? If I read a bunch of books on John Lennon and suddenly start imagining that I'm John Lennon and thinking I have memories of John Lennon, I'm not John Lennon, I'm just somebody who's delusional, no matter how accurate those memories might seem. Well, given this, someone who defends the memory theory might say, well, look, memories are what make you the same person, but only if it's a real memory. If you have a real memory of being John Lennon or Frank or Eleanor Roosevelt or John F. Kennedy, then you're really them, but if you have a fake memory, you're not. Well, this response creates some huge problems. Because, then the next question we should ask is, well, what is a real memory? It's not enough that a memory is accurate, that it accurately describes events, right? Why not? Well, think of these public people who leave records of their lives, right? Frank left this very detailed diary. It's why we know about it, right? It's one of the reasons she's famous. If someone obsessively read her diary, they might have false memories that accurately reflect her life, right? Where did you live when you were 10, or where did Anne Frank live when you were 10? someone who's read enough, who's imaginative enough, might know very well, right? We lived on this street. It's here. It looks like this. Someone, if it's John Lennon, his life was incredibly well documented. We can imagine the delusional person knowing all kinds of facts about John and Yoko's personal relationship, seeming to remember them and those facts being accurate, even though these memories are obviously fake, right? Well, then we get another answer. It's like, well, accuracy is not enough. It's a real memory if it's accurate and you really were that person. Accurate, is Kaylin really Franck? Well, if she has Anne Frank's memories, but also if she was really Anne Frank. Well, what's wrong with that account? Well, the whole point here is to figure out if you really were them, right? The whole point of the memory account is to answer this question: would your consciousness downloaded to a computer be you? Is Kaylin really Anne Frank if she has her memories? Well, now it seems it isn't doing that. It seems like if we're talking about them really being the person, we need to fall back on something else, right? If you say, well, she has her memories and she's also really her, well, obviously the memory account can't be doing the work. Are you saying she has her memories and she has her soul? Well, then you're back to the soul account. Are you not giving me an account? Well, then you're just kind of waving your hands, right? If you need something else, if you need to be able to say, well, they really were this person, on top of having memories, then it doesn't seem the memory account is doing its job. And look, just to really hammer this home, we can picture this little dialogue. Somebody says, well, what's personal identity? Memory account person says, well, personal identity is having a real memory of being that person. Then our questioner, let's imagine him a good, annoying philosopher who keeps asking questions. Well, what is it that makes it a real memory? Answer: it's a real memory if you really were that person. Well, what makes you that person? Answer: you are that person if you have a real memory of being that person. Just look, this goes in a circle, right? We don't get anywhere. Person doesn't really answer the question. They just go back to the top and we keep going through the circle. Circular accounts are not good ones. At least not when the circle is as small as this. What makes you the same person? Memory. Well, real memory, right? What makes it a real memory? Well, if you really are the same person. Well, what makes you the same person? Memory. It's a very small circle if this is the best the memory account can do.